though the stories are made up. As you Viva, New Jersey, by Gloria Gonzalez. Illustrated by Melody Rosales. Genre: realistic fiction stories have settings and characters that seem like real people, though the stories are made up. As you read, notice the details in the story that give the feeling of reality. As far as dogs go, it wasn't much of a prize. A hairy mongrel with clumps of bubblegum wadded on its belly. Pieces of multicolored hard candies were matted in its fur. The leash around its neck was fashioned from a cloth belt, the kind usually seen attached to old bathrobes. The dog's paws were clogged with mud from yesterday's rain, and you could see where the animal had gnawed at the irritated skin around the swollen pads. The dog was tied to an anemic tree high above the cliffs overlooking the Hudson River and the majestic New York City skyline. Lucinda traveled the route each day on her way to the high school, along the New Jersey side of the river. The short walk saddened her, despite its panoramic vista of bridges and skyscrapers, for the river reminded her of the perilous journey 6 months earlier, when she and her family had escaped from Cuba in a makeshift boat with 7 others. They had spent 2 freezing nights adrift in the ocean, uncertain of their destination, till a U.S. Coast Guard cutter towed them to the shores of Key West. From there, they wound their way north, staying temporarily with friends in Miami, and finally settling in West New York, New Jersey, the most densely populated town in the United States. Barely a square mile high above the Palisades, the town boasted a population of 47,000. Most of the community was housed in mammoth apartment buildings that seemed to reach into the clouds. The few private homes had cement lawns and paved driveways where there should have been backyards. Lucinda longed for the spacious front porch where she'd sat at night with her friends while her grandmother bustled about the house, humming her Spanish songs. Lucinda would ride her bike to school and sometimes not see a soul for miles, just wildflowers amid a forest of greenery. Now it was cement and cars and trucks and motorcycles and clanging fire engines that seemed to be in constant motion, shattering the air with their menacing roar. Lucinda longed painfully for her grandmother. The old woman had refused to leave her house in Cuba, despite the family's pleas, so she had remained behind, promising to see them again one day. The teenager, tall and slight of build, with long dark hair that reached down her spine, was uncomfortable among her new classmates, most of whom she towered over. Even though the majority of them spoke Spanish and came from Cuba, Argentina, and Costa Rica, they were not like any of her friends back home. These American girls wore heavy makeup to school, dressed in jeans and high heels, and talked about rock singers and TV stars that she knew nothing of. They all seemed to be busy, rushing through the school corridors, huddling in laughing groups, mingling with boys, and chatting openly with teachers as if they were personal friends. It was all too confusing. Things weren't much better at home. Her parents had found jobs almost immediately and were often away from the tiny, cramped apartment. Her brother quickly made friends and was picked for the school baseball team, traveling to nearby towns to compete. All Lucinda had were her memories, and now this dog, whom she untied from the tree. The animal was frightened and growled at her when she approached, but she spoke softly and offered a soothing hand, which he tried to attack. Lucinda persisted, and the Dog, perhaps grateful to be freed from the mud puddles, allowed her to lead him away. She didn't know what she was going to do with him now that she had him. Pets were not allowed in her building, and her family could be evicted. She couldn't worry about that now. Her main concern was to get him out of the cold. Even though it was April and supposedly spring, the weather had yet to top 50 degrees. At night, she slept under 2 blankets, wearing warm socks over her cold feet. Another night outdoors, and the dog could freeze to death. Lucinda reached her building and comforted the dog. "I'm not going to hurt you." She took off her jacket and wrapped it quickly around the animal, hoping to disguise it as a bundle under her arm. "Don't make any noise," she begged. She waited till a woman with a baby stroller exited the building and quickly dashed inside unseen. She opted not to take the elevator, fearful of running into someone, and instead lugged the dog and her school bag up the 8 flights of stairs. Lucinda quickly unlocked the apartment door and plopped the dog on her bed. The animal instantly shook its hair free and ran in circles atop her blanket. "Don't get too comfortable," Lucinda cautioned. "You can't stay." She dashed to the kitchen and returned moments later with a bowl of water and a plate of leftover chicken and yellow rice. The dog bolted from the bed and began attacking the food before she even placed it on the floor. The girl sat on the edge of the bed and watched contentedly as he devoured the meal. "How long has it been since you've eaten?" The dog swallowed the food hungrily, not bothering to chew, and quickly lapped up the water. It was then, with the dog's head lowered to the bowl, that Lucinda spotted the small piece of paper wedged beneath the belt around its neck. She slid it out carefully and saw the word that someone had scrawled with a pencil. "Chauncey. Is that your name?" The dog leaped to her side and nuzzled its nose against her arm. "It's a crazy name, but I think I like it," she smiled. Outside the window, 8 stories below, 2 fire engines pierced the afternoon with wailing sirens. Lucinda didn't seem to notice as she stroked the animal gently. Working quickly before her parents were due to arrive, she filled the bathtub with water and soap detergent and scrubbed the animal clean. The dog didn't enjoy it. He kept trying to jump out, so Lucinda began humming a Spanish song her grandmother used to sing to her when she was little. It didn't work. Chauncey still fought to get free. Once the animal was bathed, Lucinda attacked the clumps of hair with a scissor and picked out the sticky globs of candy. "Look at that! You're white," Lucinda discovered. While using her brother's hair blower, she ran a quick comb through the fur, which now was silvery and tan with faint traces of black. "You're beautiful," the girl beamed. The dog seemed to agree. It picked up its head proudly and flicked its long ears with pride. Lucinda hugged him close. "I'll find you a good home, I promise," she told the animal. Knowing that her parents would arrive any moment, Lucinda gathered up the dog, covering him with her coat, and carried him down 9 flights to the basement. She crept quietly past the superintendent's apartment and deposited the animal in a tiny room behind the bank of washing machines. The room, the size of a small closet, contained all the electrical levers that supplied power to the apartments and the elevator. Chauncey looked about, confused. He jumped up as if he knew he was about to be abandoned again. His white, hairy paw came dangerously close to hitting the protruding, red master switch near the door. Lucinda knelt to the animal. "I'll be back. Promise." She closed the door behind her, hoping the dog wouldn't bark, and hurried away. An outline of a plan was taking shape in her mind. Ashley. The girl sat in front of her in English and always went out of her way to say hi. She didn't seem to hang out with the other kids, and whenever they passed in the corridor, she was alone. But what really made her even more appealing was that she lived in a real house, just a block away. Lucinda had seen her once going in. Maybe Ashley would take Chauncey.